Walking Stick Library presents Remdesivir Safety with your librarian hostess with the mostest, Eileen Kramer. And remember, you can catch us live on Twitch. This all started, the Remdesivir started this afternoon with me watching CloutHub, but CloutHub doesn't always give you what you need. So sometimes, especially for Vax Choice, you gotta go on Rumble. Let's have a look-see.
No treatment until you go to the hospital. Then your treatment are two things that are bound to kill you: ventilators and remdesivir.
And that is our Secretary of Health and Human Services. If he makes you sick, I'm sorry. Grab a barf bag.
And Tony Fauci knew the remdesivir would kill you. It is homicide. And if you look, how does it kill people? Kidney failure, heart failure, and all organ collapse.
They rolled out remdesivir onto a substantial number of patients for which we all saw it was killing the patients. And now it's the FDA-approved drug that is continuing to kill patients in the United States. As these patients get remdesivir, they have a less than 25% chance of survival if they get more than 2 doses. Now they're rolling it out on children as well, and into the nursing homes or skilled nursing facilities as early intervention. And if you ask me, this isn't a hospital, this is a concentration camp.
Okay. This was a COVID drug, and it was called Remdesivir. Medline gives it another name. I did a little bit of pre-research, and I'll show you where that comes up later. But right now, I'm not going to be sloppy tonight. I am looking for Remdesivir. And I want to see if there's any credence to what this lady said. So I would be looking for, hello, what are the adverse effects, since it seems to have them. Most drugs do. And the other thing I'd be looking for is, of course, how to avoid them. I might be looking for something that is called, and again, we're staying with the same kind of thing here, contraindications. Times when people who should not get remdesivir, and situations where you wouldn't want to use it. The other thing I'm interested in, and we're going to be a different shade of pink on this side. Yeah. And let's bring this to front, since this is our front and center tonight. Okay. So the first thing we're going to need to do is probably, if we're heading in this direction, it's Medline. In this direction, we could go to Google Scholar or just straight out to Google News. If we're going to do Medline, we're going to need Google. And I'm going to stop periodically, see how everybody's doing. And if you left, I wouldn't cry, because I know how busy you are. And I'm just noise in your background, but that's okay. Let's go to GSU Library. And we want all that Medline-y goodness, so we are gonna skip this big box. There are times when Medline is just like a perfect tool. And this is one of those nights. So we're gonna scroll down to Medline with full text and pop it open. And I'm going to give this a new search, and I'm going to type in, and this isn't happening. Now I can search it as a keyword. I guess that's what I'm going to have to do. And we're just going to search it. Okay. here we have it, the kinetics of SARS-CoV-2 viremia in patients receiving remdesivir. Now, do I have that as a drug? No, I don't. But I do have COVID-19 drug treatment. So I'm going to click that. And we're going to put together a search. Let me pull some space up for us. I'm going to make sure we're running the right colors because we don't always do that. I'm going to get us a couple of little potatoes. These always they look like potatoes when you draw them, then they become perfect circles. It's one of my favorite fun things to do. That one's not right. And we're going to type in we're not going to type it in that color. And over here, we're going to have COVID-19 and that's a subject heading, so it's a little different. And we're going to try to get into the right box. And we hopefully will get an alternate name for remdesivir. I'm going to put an and in between these, and let's see what we get. And it's going to be bass-ackwards tonight. And remdesivir. Bingo, there's one right there. There's another one right there. Okay. Lots of safety and effectiveness studies. I'm going to grab one because I want to see if there's a name for the drug. And there is. I think it is called adenosine monophosphate. Because I've seen that before in the rehearsals. And if we want to see it again, let's go back to results. Let's do it right, folks. Safety of remdesivir. And again, this is about the safety. That is exactly what I'm looking for. Right here, you see it? Adenosine monophosphate and adverse effects. I don't know why they don't call it remdesivir. It's one of those things that you never figure out. And if we go down a little further, again, you will see adenosine monophosphate. So we now know what they call it. So I'm going to copy pasta it. Control C. I'm going to go back up and do a mesh heading search. Again, this is just a very good tool. There are sometimes best tools. This happens to be one of them. This, by the way, this very good, very precise, very consistent subject heading setup is paid for with your tax dollars. It's under the NIH, under the National Library of Medicine, under the Department of Commerce. Medline and ERIC, there are two big databases out there that are your tax dollars at work. And our president is gunning for them. But this is one of the really good things the government does. And one of the reasons that just about every library has Medline is that it's publicly funded and therefore dirt cheap. EBSCO is running it. This is an EBSCO interface to Medline, but this is the same stuff that's in PubMed. It's just a much easier to use interface. Okay. We have it. And what does it say it is? Okay, that's not helping me, but that apparently is what remdesivir is. So we've got adenosine monophosphate. And what we're looking for, because this woman was talking about it killing everybody, is adverse effects. Let's make that a major concept and let's run this search. Okay. Okay, we got our first one. QT interval has to do with heartbeat. Investigating the effects of remdesivir on corrected QT interval in patients with severe COVID-19, a historical cohort study. This is 2024. Let's have a look-see. Okay, there is little information about the risk of drug-induced QT prolongation by remdesivir as the most important FDA-approved anti-COVID drug. Prolongation of corrected QT interval is considered as an indicator of unfavorable outcome, which may ultimately include torsade de pointe, which must be something with the heart, and provoke ventricular fibrillation. The aim of this study is to determine the effects of remdesivir on QTc in patients with severe COVID disease. A historical cohort study was conducted. That means they looked at medical records on 249 patients who experienced severe COVID-19 disease, were candidate for treatment by intravenous remdesivir. We obtained 12-lead echocardiogram at the admission time and 5 days later to find significant change in QTc and QT interval following therapy. We took blood samples at the time of hospitalization and then every day to determine serum levels of electrolytes, complete blood count, fasting blood sugar, creatine, and complete blood count. The results of this analysis showed blood pressure and heart rate were lower and total white blood cell counts and neutrophil counts, FBS, and CR levels were higher at the than the first day of the study. Furthermore, QT interval was more prolonged at the 5th day compared to the beginning of remdesivir therapy. However, QTc was not significantly increased on the 5th day in comparison with the first day. The current study found no evidence linking the administration of remdesivir with prolongation of the QTc interval. So, it gets a clean bill of health. And here we have the safety and effectiveness of hospitalized patients with COVID-19 and severe renal impairment experience at a large medical center. And this is old news, but it's not such old news. These are all 2024 articles, so this is still being studied. And data versus anecdotes is a big thing. Okay, literature on the safety of remdesivir in hospitalized COVID-19 patients with severe renal impairment is limited. We aimed to investigate the safety and effectiveness of remdesivir in this population. We conducted a retrospective cohort study of adult hospitalized COVID-19 patients who received remdesivir between April 2022 and October 2022. So these are very sick people, and again, this is an observational study. It would be unethical to withhold a drug that might be helpful. Outcomes were compared between estimated glomerular filtration rate, 30 milliliters per minute and 30 milliliters per 1.73 meters squared, less than 30 milliliters per minute per 1.73 millimeters squared, and I don't know why it isn't cubed, and greater than 30 milliliters per minute per 1.73 meters squared groups. The primary safety outcomes were acute kidney injury and bradycardia, while the primary effectiveness outcomes included mortality in COVID-19 dedicated wards and hospital mortality. Secondary outcomes included laboratory changes, disease progression, and recovery time. A total of 1,343 patients were recruited, with 307, 22.9% in the less than 30 milliliter glomerular filtration group and 1,036 in the more than 30 milliliter glomerular filtration group. Patients with glomerular filtration below 30 milliliters had higher risks of acute kidney injury and hospital mortality, but had comparable risks of bradycardia and mortality in dedicated wards than patients with a glomerular filtration rate of more than 30 milliliters. Risk of disease progression was higher in the glomerular filtration below 30 group, adjusted odds ratio 1.62 to 1. No difference between the two groups in laboratory changes and recovery time. Hospitalized COVID-19 patients receiving remdesivir with severe renal impairment had an increased risk of acute kidney injury, hospital mortality, and COVID-19 disease progression compared to patients without severe renal impairment. So it may not be such a good idea to give you this med if you have severe COVID and your kidneys are already shot. Okay, here we have pediatric patients, and again, this is 2024. So there's a lot of post-approval research going on. They don't just sit on their tails and say, this is safe and effective. Okay. Background, transaminase. ACE is an amine is amino acids. ACE is a enzyme. And creatine elevations have been well described in adults treated with remdesivir for COVID-19. Creatine is a product of what the kidneys are doing. So transaminase and creatine elevations have been well described in adults tested with remdesivir for COVID-19. It is hypothesized that similar safety profiles exist in children with COVID-19 treated with remdesivir, but available data is limited, especially in children less than 12 months old, with the primary aim of this study was to determine the prevalence and timing elevations of transaminases and creatine in children with COVID-19 who were treated with remdesivir. This was a retrospective observational cohort study including all pediatric patients admitted to a single freestanding children's hospital who were positive for COVID-19 and received at least one dose of remdesivir between January 1st, 2020 and May 31st, 2022. Available baseline and peak transaminase and creatine concentrations were evaluated. Multivariable logistic regression analysis was performed to identify risk factors for transaminase elevation of 100. We had 180 patients in the study. Creatine elevation of any grade was noticed in 16% and remained elevated only in those with underlying chronic kidney disease. To be a kid in the hospital with COVID, you gotta be real sick. Transaminase elevation of any grade was noted in 58% of the patients and remained elevated in only 1%. Older age and critical respiratory disease were associated with higher risk of transaminase elevation, whereas non-Hispanic ethnicity was strongly associated with protection against significant transaminase elevation. In our cohort of hospitalized children with COVID-19 who were treated with remdesivir, most patients experienced only mild transaminitis and normal creatine concentrations. A limited number of patients experienced laboratory abnormalities, which were transient, suggesting a favorable safety profile for remdesivir in pediatrics. Okay. Somebody got alarmed over. Oops, that's not what we want to see. It's our friend over here. Somebody got alarmed over nothing. I'm going to back us up.
From our movie, Epidemic of Fraud, because you had a really powerful moment, and this will also remind...
I recommend it.
Okay, this lady...
With another episode of Broken Truth. Today, I have the lovely and talented Nicole Siratek from American Frontline Nurses.
That's who this lady is from. She is from American Frontline Nurses. And we do a lot with lookalikes. There are critical care nursing organizations. They're never called Frontline. When something is called Frontline, If you read enough of this garbage, you know what it means. And we're going to take a look at what it means right now. I'm just going to run the search. Yes, I accept. Just get lost. And they are doing a remdesivir study. I don't know if they've completed it or where it was published. We can look. Welcome to American Frontline Nurses, where compassionate care meets unwavering dedication. We are more than just healthcare professionals. We are advocates, educators, and champions of positive change. At American Frontline Nurses, our mission is clear: to provide comprehensive education and resources to nurses, patients, and their families, enabling them to receive safe, equitable, and personalized care. We can take a look. Here we have a remdesivir study. We are conducting a research study to examine the adverse effects and fatalities associated with remdesivir, a widely used COVID treatment. Despite being approved for emergency use, many patients and families have accepted severe complications, including organ failure, worsening illness, and death following remdesivir administrations. And they're still looking for the people that they want to have in here. And this is not a great way to get a sample. And the reason it's not is you're only going to get the complainers. And the people who bother to come over here. So you're going to get a biased sample without even thinking about it. And yes, there's a Maha Nurse Alliance here. And let's educate. And I don't see anything about vaccinations, but I'm sure they're in here. Does this have a search on it anywhere? No, it doesn't. Let me get back to home. About testimonials, demographics and metrics, our team, contact, programs and services. Okay. This is other stuff. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of things here, but I'm not seeing anything about COVID vaccine, and this doesn't look like it has a search on it. However, we can run a search ourselves. This is the Maha Nurse Alliance. And again, and here we have the Miranda warning. This information, including but not limited to text, graphics, and images and other material, is for informational purposes. No material on this site is intended to be used as a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, and treatment. Always seek advice of your physician or another qualified healthcare provider. Okay. And they're in the little town of Elko, Nevada. But they would look somewhat real. I don't see anything about, okay, they're selling supplements, publications, apparel. Of course, they're always selling something. They have to keep the light on. So let's take this down for the moment and let's work with the other half of this. And I'm going to make some more potatoes for us. In fact, I'm going to take us to the other side of this and put us back at 100. And I'll get our potatoes back out. And thank you for putting up with this tonight, Tinker. You are a sweetheart, if ever there was. Okay? So I'm going to get my potatoes back out. I'm peeling some potatoes. And what we want to see is where's the overlap. And this time we can do a Google search or even a Google Scholar search. Remdesivir. Yes, the anti-vax movement was also anti-remdesivir. I'm going to do it that way, but there are variations. We'll just hope we've got it right. We'll put an and on it. And we can do both Google and Google Scholar. Because we should do more Google. I get told that. So let me slide this back over. And I'm going to slide this one over here. We're going to make some space here. It's better to get a nice big Google box for what we want. And we're going to try. Okay, anti-vaccine you like better. Okay. That's from the National Institute of Health. Okay, I'm still looking. We don't see it, but that's okay. I'm going to open this up anyway, just to get a quick look from the NIH. Okay, so this is given to people with kidney transplant. But I'm not going to give you that right now. Institute of Human Virology over here. The antiviral drug remdesivir can help keep unvaccinated people at risk of severe COVID-19 out of hospitals, according to a study that found the treatment reduced hospitalization and death by 87%. Early in the pandemic, remdesivir, an infusion therapy developed by Gilead Science, was the first coronavirus treatment authorized by federal regulations in hospitals. Wednesday's study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, is the first to show that remdesivir can be useful when given on an outpatient basis. And we can read the full story right here in the Washington Post, which I'm going to hit a paywall. Clunk. I can get around that by going through news and newspapers. We're not having much luck. Let's try it the way I wrote it. Go. I can do either one, but it's not helping. Here's one in Slate. Finally, we got one in Slate. And Slate's okay. It's like Time and Newsweek. The comments are not. There's somebody getting a shot, looking very unhappy. It's been nearly a year since the first vaccines for coronavirus were administered, promising a way out of the horrid pandemic that has, at times, at the time of publication, claimed the lives of 51 million people globally. On their own, vaccines haven't been enough to end the pandemic, thanks primarily to hesitancy and lack of global availability, so the public health toolkit needed something new. Enter 2 pills. And this is about Paxlovid and Merck, but let's see if they have anything on remdesivir. They're also easier for patients to take. Okay, so let's go back and let's try Google Scholar. And then if that does not work, we will give our all to the other. Go. Okay, so this is a good one, nih.gov. Myths and conspiracy. Okay, that's still not quite getting it. I know it's here. I'm not doing very well. We could go back and try. I'm pulling that guy out and I'm putting in conspiracy. And I'm going to get my squiggler. Time to squiggle. Let's try again. Conspiracy theorist. Okay. The role of influencers in public. Ooh. Okay. I still don't see anything about remdesivir, and I don't know why, because this gets important. This looks like the best of them here from Sage, and I've got Sage access, so this shouldn't be a problem. In fact, this looks healthy. Let's grab this on the first go and see if we can find remdesivir as one of the choices. In this article, we symmetrically explore the political underpinnings and connections of pharmaceutical drugs during the COVID-19 pandemic. We illustrate some different and shifting dynamics of expert lay interplay, competing knowledge claims, politically charged environments, as well as actions and actors that can bring drugs to prominence, focusing on 3 drugs: ivermectin, remdesivir, and Coronil, which I've never heard of. We offer 3 axes on which they can be apprehended with political logics. Ivermectin is a popular drug, remdesivir as an establishment drug in the United States, and Coronil as a nationalist drug in India. That's interesting. These 3 pharmaceuticals were politicized, and perhaps more surprising, politics became pharmaceuticalized. Trust in these treatments was intimately related to articulations of the threats posed by the pandemic and the best ways of addressing them, both manipulated politically by relative political actors. Yikes. So that's a good one. I'm going to go back, and we'll put that one in a separate tab. And here's Anatomy of a Conspiracy Theory. This is a law review. Don't you love it? I can log in via my institution without any problem. Georgia State University, Open Athens. Let me in, not the law school proxy. We're on Open Athens. Things you just learn if you know how things work a little bit behind the scenes. And there we are. And I can pop this out so it takes up more of my screen like it's supposed to. Because it isn't now, that's for sure. Okay, now it's here. And let's look for our remdesivir. In the first years of its funding, the grant produced numerous published papers and scientific advancements, including genetic sequencing of 2 bat coronaviruses, now used as lab tools to test the antiviral remdesivir. And after the first 4 years, the grant was renewed. Let's get more remdesivir. Is that the only one we got? That stinks. All that work for nothing. Pseudoscience during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's try opening that up and seeing how well I do. Okay. Log in via institution. I may not get in, but we can always try. Georgia State University Library. In we go. And it still doesn't like me, but we can get the abstract. The COVID-19 pandemic remarkably changed the landscape of scientific research. Preprint and open access publications were, this isn't quite what I'm looking for either. So I think we ought to go back to the big box, which means we're going to get Google back up. And we're going to go to Library GSU Adu and let ourselves in. And we're going to go do Remdesivir and anti-vax. Go. Try it that way. I'm not sure if it has 2 X's or not. Sometimes people add another X because it looks cool. Go. Stop complaining. That was because the top of this doesn't work very well. Okay, anti-vaccine. Okay, conspiracy. Go. We try. Ah, there's a misspelling in here. Try it now. Okay. We have a CNN one. Broward County, Florida School District issues mask mandate despite Governor Ron DeSantis' threat of not paying superintendent salaries. Former anti-vaxxer now promoting getting coronavirus vaccine after being infected. My Pillow CEO Mike Lindell hosts event purporting to prove the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. Rand Paul reveals wife bought stock in Remdesivir in 2020. Okay, that's not quite what we're looking for. Responding to questions from an anti-vaxxer. Let's access that. That we're going to have access to without any questions. I'm going to find my Remdesivir. There it is. Okay, and here we have it. Question: there's very little conversation about therapeutics at this point on our COVID journey. There is very little conversation about other therapeutics at this point in our COVID journey are proven beneficial. I can't help but believe the marriage of big pharma and government is pushing the vaccine over treatments. Why are therapeutics downplayed and ignored? Unfortunately, and I think this was 2022, we don't have a magic bullet like penicillin to treat COVID. We have convalescent serum, the steroid dexamethasone, remdesivir, and the rheumatoid arthritis drug, Olumiant, plus new drugs by Merck and Pfizer. That's Paxlovid. As for proven beneficial therapies, everything you read on the web doesn't stand the test of science. I am a numbers science guy. That's what I write about in my column and talk about on TV, radio shows, and Facebook page. The snake oil therapists what you referencing failed the test of science. They include hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, bleach, UV therapy, and the recent one referred to by Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, who is now head of the Senate, mouthwash, which the mouthwash people immediately debunked. Yikes. So we are getting this in bits and pieces and bits. Oh boy. COVID litigation conference uniting lawyers and doctors in fight for liberty. You had to pay money to go to that thing. New American is put out by the Birchers, but let's go look for Remdesivir. Where is it? There it is. Attorney Warner Mendenhall, Esquire. Lawyers put Esquire after their names. Pointed out that corporate executive officers of major Fortune 500 companies were incentivized with millions of dollars in bonus payments if their employees' roster reached 90% of the mRNA jab compliance. Dr. Marek, who has since been, I think he has lost his MD because he was a pain in the tail. Canada does things like that. Pointed out that hospital systems kill people with remdesivir, get $500,000 per corpse. The body fees are still substantial for killing people other ways, but big money for death by remdesivir, and hospital administrators have a rapacious appetite for bodies. That's why there's been so much pushback against ivermectin and insistence that every death be labeled a COVID death. I thought you'd like that. Well, we know what we got, unfortunately. Okay. This one, I think I had a hand in. Now, this is 2024. Let's look for our remdesivir. Agitators bash the hospital following the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention guidelines using the antiviral drug remdesivir while failing to treat patients with controversial drugs like ivermectin, an antiparasitic, and hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial touted as a COVID cure by former President Trump. The FDA says neither drug is safe nor effective in treating COVID-19. Others shared their grief claiming relatives died because of the hospital's COVID-19 treatments or refusal to prescribe ivermectin. And up here, I think this was Sarasota. Okay. The sister of Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and a band of conservative anti-vax activists are running the board of a renowned public hospital in Florida under the banner Medical Freedom. Yes, this is Sarasota. If they win, they'll hold a majority of Sarasota's award-winning facility, where one of their allies, elected in 2022 with two other health freedom candidates to the 9-member panel, is already trying to peddle vaccine misinformation. Okay. Stop right here. This hospital in Sarasota has an interesting story behind it. I'm on Jane Ruby's Telegram channel. I've been watching these people forever. I like watching nasty people. I like watching crazies. I love blood on the tracks. I will admit that before I admit anything else. And she was getting people together for a protest, to protest one of the board meetings because the hospital was killing people with remdesivir. That was according to her. She's very nihilistic. She doesn't believe you have a government. She doesn't believe a lot of things. She is a health economist. She is not a physician. And she's also a nurse. Gives nurses a bad name. Anyway, I was on the chat list as well, and people were starting to talk about hanging people and bringing their guns. And since this had a particular time and place, this was a credible threat. Let's just say I took a lot of screenshots and gave them to the Sarasota County Sheriff. And so did I guess other people may have done it too, but I ratted her out. She never knew. You could tell her, but I ratted her out a couple of years before this article was written. So they're still at it down in Florida. She's still at it. There was no more violence on the list after the rat out. I think Sarasota Finest came knocking on her door and said, "Cool it, girl," and she cooled it. They learned not to do that. Anyway, so my guess is we've pretty much started getting information on these things. The conspiracists are up to their eyeballs in anti-remdesivir. It does have adverse effects, but it's given to very sick people and the benefits outweigh them. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, you can catch me live on Twitch.